It's time. Let's just, keeps coming. To review. Well, there we go. Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood of Venice. This is a full campaign review. I have seen basically everything that this campaign has to offer, and now I'm coming to you live with the official review. And so this will be broken down into a few sections. Number one, I'm going to teach you the sort of the basics of the campaign. Then we'll talk about the differences between the collector's edition and the basic edition, which if you want to see the full contents of this, if you're really jonesing to see everything, you can check out, I did an unboxing when I first got this. And then I'll also include in the discussion near the end a bit of a section about spoilers for the campaign. So if you don't want anything spoiled, don't worry. As long as you skip that section, you're good. I care about your enjoyment, and I would never do anything to take away that enjoyment from you. That being said, I'm going to take away your enjoyment if you solely base your opinion on what I think, because it started out great and then was just okay. And I also think that there were a lot of flaws in this game, most of them being Bastiano. Is that Bastiano? No. Bastiano. So let's set up a scenario. The game comes with the rulebook and the campaign booklet. And in this campaign booklet, you'll find, well, a canal, a rogue canal, and a series of unfortunate events, and also a series of campaigns. These are a series of scenarios that you are going to go through as you progress through the game, and it will tell you to set up how the map will look, what sort of guards will be added, and what envelopes and special instructions that you have. So we're going to start with Memory 1.1 because it has a little bit more of a robust map. So Memory 1.1 is going to look like this. I kept my pieces in the punch board because you can slot them back in, and then it serves as a little token tray. For those of you who are playing the game, this served very well because really you only need to use, like, you can see which ones were punched out and which weren't. We only used like 4 of these for the whole game, even though it gives you a bunch of them. And rarely used the markers because... But it's nice that the cardboard is thick enough that you can use this almost as a token holder rather than having to like sort through a bunch of tokens, which I thought was really nice. Wait, that ruined my cool transition. Pow! Setup is actually quite nice. There's not going to be a cool transition, that's fine. Setup is actually pretty decent to do if you're playing with multiple people. I really like that each tile, you don't really have to match the artwork with it. It's just like a type of tile. So you'll have your canal tiles, you'll have your roof tiles, you'll have your indoor tiles, and you'll have your street tiles, essentially. And each one has nothing around it, and then a side where there's this black line on it which indicates a wall. And so as you're setting them up, it's pretty intuitive to just kind of lay out the scenario board so that you can get on with your merry way. What we found was helpful is just having like a stack of the room tiles and the roof tiles, etc. So that when there was a roof section, you just plop them all down. Boop, oh, there's a wall there, easy peasy, flip it over. You also then get to add from this big tray of minis, of which Bastiano, Claudio, and Daria have been lovingly painted. Way to go, Griffin. You'll want to keep that to the side because you'll have your crossbowmen and your brutes, essentially. That you'll put onto the board, as well as these little ladder tokens to indicate when guards can climb up on a roof. You as assassins can jump off the roof whenever you want, but guards can only go up on the roofs when they have a ladder because they're little babies. And later on, you might even use more minis. You'll also add in your starting location and some little lookouts or hiding places that you might want to hide in. You'll also add in any little objective markers and tokens, this just indicating that there will be guards guarding them, and when there's guards on the objective tokens, they can't leave the space like normal guards do. You'll also set up your little event deck, which will grow over the course of the game, and usually an envelope will tell you, hey, add certain events to the top, so you'll see those first, and then if the game progresses, you'll hit events from previous mission, put that in the glare zone of my table, and then you'll put the specific rules for the crossbowmen in the crossbow section, and the brutes or the agiles in the brute section. So we're going to use the brutes for now, just for this example, although they are much too strong for this specific area. You'll also have your own envelope for your particular character that you'll pull out. You'll choose whichever level you're on. For Bastiano, all of your levels are bad. Add that to the area, equip any weapons that you want, which will give you different special abilities, place your people at the starting of the map, and begin the game. Now, the game proceeds as such. Every character will have these 3 cubes. These are your 3 action cubes. They indicate that you have those action points to work with throughout the course of the game, and you can do a number of different things, such as moving around, climbing the tower, searching objectives, hiding bodies, attacking people for whatever number is specified on your cheat sheet, and these things change and evolve as you progress throughout the game. But the basic actions that you're going to be doing are moving through the map. So if I was to go 1, 2, 3 and jump down there, that's my turn. 1, 2, 3. Daria could go 1, 2, 3 and jump into the canal or canal, however you pronounce it. You'll take your turns. Everyone will use their 3 action points, and then an event card will be drawn, and then the guards will perform their actions. You'll flip up this card, and it will show you what will happen if the guards are not on alert, or if the guards have been alerted. If you've been not stealthy enough as you've been going through the game and you've triggered the alert state, you cannot switch that back unless you have a specific item. And it is always a lot nicer for you, and you can see the types of people that are spawning if nobody is alerted, or the types of guards that are rushing into the place if they have been alerted. The guards will also be predetermined in their movement, and you will know how they're moving, because at the beginning of every turn, you're going to draw one of these event cards, do what it says, and then it'll be indicated by this compass directional point right here that the guards will be moving east. So you know that no matter where the guards spawn, the guards will spawn first. More of them will appear on the board at all the different spawn points, which I didn't put out around the board in the setup, but they're indicated like this, showing where the guards will emerge from as they emerge onto the board 1, 2, and then start their patrol east. Now these guards can't patrol there because there is a wall there, so they just don't. But if they were up here, they would patrol right into your spot, and you would be forced to make a stealth roll. So there are 3 different types of rolls in this game. One is whenever you move into a space with a guard, you have to roll a dice for each one of the guards that might spot you. And if you roll the eyeballs, well, like Bastiano always does, you are spotted. The alert state immediately gets triggered from green to red, and then more and more guards will be pouring in. You don't really want to be spotted by the guards, and so you're trying to avoid them, slip past them, so you can complete your objectives, or move in silently and then stab them before they know what's going to go on. When you are taking out a guard, you'll be rolling your little assassin dice, depending upon the number of dice that are indicated on your weapon. You can roll them and do a hit. You don't want to roll these little swords, because that means the guards will see you and retaliate, and then roll their own dice depending upon the type of guard that they are. They'll roll a certain number of dice and hit you, or you defend. You also don't have a lot of life in this game, and if you get completely hit by guards, which is pretty easy to do, like if you're just pin-cushioned by a bunch of crossbowmen because you just burst into an area thinking that you were going to be able to stab them silently and then didn't, and then misrolled, well, you can die pretty easily by like an onslaught of salvo. And all of this is to emphasize that stealth is the goal here. Your goal is to jump around like an assassin. You're not like a huge bruiser until later on you get more armor and better weapons, but especially starting out at the beginning, you want to jump around, strategize, avoid the guards, use the events to your advantage, and complete whatever objective it is. Most of the objectives revolve around you and your party getting to a certain spot, knocking out the guards, spending action points to trigger something, and then running all the way as quick as you can back to this fast travel station. Once you all get back to the fast travel station, you win the scenario, you get to read the little passage, and you get to keep on moving forward. if you fail one of these games, if you fail a scenario, they say, just do it again. And if you fail that, they say, don't worry about it. The better assassins come in, they kill everyone, and you can keep on going with the mission. So it says, in terms of keeping the campaign progressing forward and moving things forward, they sort of yield to that. That's the overarching sense of the game. That is what you are going to be interacting with. That is the type of game that you are going to be playing as you go through this campaign and these quests. And this entire book of events, these sequences of events, which I'm not going to show you all of them, but I am going to show you the back of our campaign book, which has all the different experience points that you will kind of cross off as you're going through. It shows how much experience that you've done, shows what attempt you beat it on, and then you can also include these stickers for 100% completion. We pretty much got 100% completion on most of the missions. We just decided not to put the stickers on because we felt it was just really unsatisfying and we didn't care whatsoever. The same with our experience points. We kept track of our experience points as we went through so that we could level up. And then once we hit level 4, there kind of was no reason to keep on crossing out the experience points as we kept playing through the scenarios and moving forward. But I do really like that there is that aspect of the stickers and the elements you can add in, and that sort of speaks to anybody who has played a game and on the PlayStation or whatever and wants to get those 100% completion, right? That is a very sort of video game completionist thing, and I really do like that it's included for the people who will enjoy and appreciate it. For me, didn't care whatsoever. I like keeping track of the levels. I like being able to level up my character Bastiano from horrible to horrible. But don't worry, at level 3, Bastiano is still horrible, and then at level 4, he's fun. Every other character is so much more fun than Bastiano, but we'll talk about the characters in a minute. But honestly, I am really glad I did play as Bastiano because it made it slightly difficult in a game that felt pretty easy when we started playing with 3 players. At 2 players, we had a couple of hiccups, but still fairly easy and intuitive for anybody who is used to board gaming, let's say, or has a decent knowledge of board gaming or breadth. And so let's talk a little bit about who this game is for. Because when we were about halfway through the campaign, around Memory 2.5, there are sort of 4 main chapters in the game. There's the prologue, your 3 episodes, who cares? And then you have about 4 to 5 different scenarios in each chapter. So you get like 20 chapters in this game. And so when we were about halfway through the game, I was already composing this review. I was thinking about it the whole time, but at around chapter 2.4, I thought to myself, you know, if I didn't promise Triton Noir that I would get to 4.1, that was the bar at which they wanted me to get to. They said, okay, you've seen everything that we have to offer. The game goes to 4.5, so we just went to 4.5. We just finished the game. But if I hadn't made that commitment to them to review the whole thing and do that overview, I probably would have stopped at around 2.4, 2.5, thinking, yeah, I've seen what this game has to offer, and I would have described it as baby's first campaign game, as a turn of phrase, right? If you have been interested in getting into board gaming, if you haven't never played a campaign game before, this could be a decently satisfying for you. You know, there's the scenarios, while they feel kind of samey, it's always, there's some fun deviation where you have 2 maps that you're dealing with, and the team kind of splits up. There's some fun little reveals for certain objectives. There are some fun set pieces that get brought in, like this big old boat mini that you'll use for 1 or 2 scenarios and then never see it again. Or Leonardo da Vinci's tank, right? Like there's some fun bits that you see. It's a nice homage to the IP, but I was like, yeah, I've seen it, I've enjoyed it, and I probably would have given it a higher rating at that point. But because I was instructed on, no, you have to get to 4.1, you have to get further along the campaign, And the way the campaign is structured, you don't really get to see these larger reveals until later on. I found that the campaign sort of dragged a little bit and became a little bit same throughout. And so then our enthusiasm and our score sort of began to dip down. I played this with two other lovely board gamers, Griffin and Aaron, and they both enjoy campaign games. They both have played a lot of Kingdom Death Monster. I know that they're playing through Tenaris Adventures right now. Like, they're no slouches when it comes to board gaming. And so we all sort of found the decision-making space as we went along to be fairly basic and therefore to be fairly obvious. Once you start learning the mechanisms of how to avoid these guards and when they spawn, it's pretty easy to avoid them. There were some tight moments where you had to fight your way out, but again, because we had a nice blend of character powers, Claudio was able to jump in and stab a lot of people and was like our cool killing machine with Claudio's ability. And Daria was like an amazing support character because she could give people extra actions once they've used them. One of my favorite parts about this game is that you don't have to take all of your actions back to back. Like, I can move one, and then you can move one, and then I can move and stab, and you can move and shoot. If you're also in the same area or the same location, you can do a coordinated attack where you all roll your dice together so that if there is any people who backfire against you, you can divvy out that damage and not take it all at once. It encourages you to stick together, but the objectives encourage you to spread apart. So like, that is all fun and good. But the decision-making space never really got deeper. And so that's why I do refer to it as Baby's first campaign game, because the decision-making space slowly wore out its welcome. And it became a little bit less exciting. And it sort of showed all of its cards early on, and then the surprises and the reveals that happened later on sort of weren't that exciting because they were just small deviations on where you would expect the game to go. But I think if you had no knowledge of campaign games, and if you hadn't played a lot of the genre, then these things might have felt a little unique to you. That's what we all sort of were musing on afterwards. But there just wasn't enough deviation in the scenarios themselves and in the feel of them. Another point of contention is this big deck of events, but because you're constantly adding to them, you don't often see the events come back. You might see one or two, but you're always adding to these different events, these different event decks, and each scenario we beat in like 4 or 5 rounds, and that's about how many new events were added. Early on in the game too, you unlock this little home base where you can assign people to do things in between missions and unlock other items and unlock a little story progression of this other side thing, upgrading your base. You can heal people, or you can have people ready to heal you if you've taken damage over the course of the game. And that all was fun in theory, but it's something that again, we pretty much immediately learned, oh, you just do this thing, you assign them in this way, and then we never really had to worry about that worker placement, that worker allocation ever again, because we just kept it the same for the whole campaign, and we're completely fine. I think a lot of this, well, one of the main things that I think was very fun in theory and then not fun whatsoever when we actually played the game were these rolls. And let me tell you, I never rolled like that in the whole game. Bastiano never got a friggin' roll like this. Bastiano always got a roll like this. Bastiano's special ability was like, even if the alert state is red or something, I can still perform detection tests as if it were green. And so what this little symbol here means is that if the alert state is red, then you're seen, but if it's green, they just kind of walk by you. So Bastiano was sort of pushed to be this master of disguise, to slip in and out of places, and he got fun to play like way later, but for the most part his ability was useless compared to the really cool abilities that everybody else. But I'm honestly really glad that I had Bastiano, because it added a little bit more difficulty, and it was one of the most memorable things about, hey, will Bastiano's ability work this time? Nope, he triggers the alarm, and me as the super sneaky one, was always triggering the alarm, whereas like the warriors were just walking by and murdering people. But I think the fact that anytime you enter a space with people, you have to roll these dice is a great fun idea to add some tension. It's like, okay, what will I roll? Will we be spotted? Oh, look, we were spotted. The alarm goes off and they attack us. Okay, but like maybe there's a different way. Oh, yeah, no, we're spotted. The alarm goes off and they attack us. Okay, but there's 3 of them. Oh, yeah. Well, no, actually it was all green, so they all missed. Like a wonderful, glorious sight. Like there's the possibility here for that tension to exist and to be pushed by these dice is a really exciting one, but I don't think it's one that ever really delivers, because once the alert state is flipped to red and you start to have people pouring in, right, it only takes that one time and then these dice kind of are more meaningless. When you're discovered, you essentially get a little red base on your character, and then whenever you run away from a group of people, like half of them follow you, and they keep following you, and then you can eventually kill one of them, and then leave your red ring behind so that people who are there will go and will investigate the ring, and you can then slip off into another direction, right? Like that promise sounds so interesting and sounds so fun, but in practice, the tension of these dice never really panned out. It was almost consistently like the first or the second time that somebody walked into your space, you were discovered. It didn't really give you the sensation of being an assassin and slowly picking people off, or having abilities where if there's only one person around, you can jump in and kill them would be so cool for everybody to have, but that kind of only applied to Claudio, whose abilities then inexplicably got worse as you leveled up. As in the first one, they specified you could just jump in and kill someone and they didn't have to roll dice, and so you weren't discovered. And then later on it was like, oh, and now they roll dice, and if you're not discovered, you kill them. So he basically got weaker as he leveled up. Same with Daria. There was a misprint on the Daria character who got their level 4 ability at level 2, and we were like, man, this level 2 ability is amazing, until we leveled up to level 3 and saw that it got worse and realized that it was a mistake. Which might have contributed something to our successes and our ease or speed of getting through the maps and the campaign. There was one envelope that just had French cards, but luckily I speak French and Aaron speaks French, so we were okay. But yeah, we just had one that was just French. But again, to be fair, Triton Noir sent this to me. This was like an open copy. So I don't know if this was necessarily like a factory sealed one. I think it had like some dents or it had been returned or something. I don't know. There might have been some issues there. Although when we were looking up on Reddit or on Board Game Geek, we saw somebody who said, "I ordered the French edition and that's all English cards," and we thought, oh. We know who got your cards there, buddy. It's me over here. Anyway, those are little sort of production flaws, which I meant to talk about later. But the concept here and the tension here never quite realizes itself to its full potential. And that's just a shame when you have such great potential on sneaking in. There's not really any dice mitigation for the security checks. And so therefore it's hard to feel like a really cool assassin when it's basically anytime you walk into a group of guys or one person, they roll a dice and, oh, look at that. They see you. Right before the alert is triggered, there are 2 spaces on this dice where they see you, and then after the alert, there are 4 spaces, so it goes up to 66%. There are also all these promises with a bunch of weapons that you can jump in and like mow down people with. But this being a stealth game and kind of pushing you in the stealth game direction with your limited health and some of the end game conditions, your limited time, I found I never really used any of my melee weapons. Like basically at all. I used my long range weapon, and that felt exciting because it was easier to pick people off without being discovered. But so you have instances of this sort of missed opportunities that kind of occur, and I think that's all because there isn't enough dice mitigation in this. And so then when there isn't that dice mitigation, it then sort of lends you to just walking around and avoiding things entirely. And avoiding conflict in these games isn't always the most fun thing to do. It's fun to chuck dice. It's fun when you get to a scenario where you have a tank and you can hop in the tank and just chuck loads of dice and mow down people across the street. And so it is nice that the game does give you a little bit of a balance between those two, but I found myself always wanting, I just wanted more from this game, and the more that I delved in and the more that I hoped that something would change, and the more campaigns that I went through and we weren't opening extra boxes, and adding new components to the game, we just kept on adding sort of the same cards, the same items, the same equipment. My enthusiasm for this game unfortunately dampened. And by the end, we were kind of just like, let's just push through it. Let's just get through, let's just finish it up. Now the game plays pretty quickly. Every scenario took, I don't know, about a half hour, 45 minutes when you were actually playing the game. Then there was the upkeep, the setup, and the teardown, and the shifting of those sorts of things. So maybe an hour for each scenario. But we played through this in, we got together maybe 5 times, and we worked our way through a chapter every time. So 5 or 6 scenarios in a good 4 to 5 hour session. The other part of this game that I really was hoping for to be good and exciting, and was exciting when it happened, was when the minis were actually on the board. And so once the alert state is triggered, you get to finally, you got to take them all out of their little things and put them all on the board. But when you can't put people on the board, that is a loss condition. And that is a fun aspect, because it's fun seeing the people swarming in and you trying to run out and get to the exit and avoid guards and like barrel through them and get to the exit and like do this mad dash as guards are chasing you and piling on top of you. Like, that is a feeling that is really cool when you're like, oh no, we might run out of these resources very soon. But it just didn't happen that often. When there was a bunch of guards, we often had the tools needed to just mow them down. And we also found a pattern and a synergy with our characters that just seemed to work. And so there wasn't really any reason to keep on deviating from that, because it did work and because we needed to get through these sorts of things efficiently. Claudio would run in and stab the people, and Daria would wave to us from behind and give us fun actions. And we'd say, Daria, you can take fun actions too if you want. And Daria's like, well, I gotta go over here and check this tower, because this tower is my special ability. I climbed to the top of the tower and revealed where there's a chest. Now go get the chest, everyone. We'd like run out and get the chest and get a little piece of loot and items to share. But yeah, the best way of describing this game is that it just doesn't reach that full potential of fun. And the more I played it, the less I wanted to. But with having a shorter scenario, with having a more repetitive scenario, with having the same thing happen over and over, I think this could be a great game for some people, or it could be a fun game in certain combinations. I know somebody else in our Discord is playing through the game right now and is really enjoying it. I think that's amazing, and I'm so thrilled that they are. But it just kind of has all of these concepts and all of this potential, and then never really goes to the degree at which it would really blow your mind. Kind of just scratches the surface. And I think that's a bit disappointing. I also think that this is a perfect example of why you shouldn't always get the deluxe. I think the collector's edition is objectively a bad purchase. I think it is. You get these extra structures, you get these ladders, you get all of the people being minis instead of standees, but it makes for such an incredible table hog. It makes for such a horrible organizational experience of trying to sift through these trays and pull everything out when they come out. Especially when all you need is just a pool of things. You need a pool of these sort of elite guards, and that's it. You don't need a mini for every character or every little boss that you're going to interact with for one scenario and then never see again. And in that scenario, the boss might go, oh, and that's it. And then you've killed them. And so having a designated mini for that, it just feels like an enormous waste. And I don't think I could ever recommend anybody other than the truest of hardcore Assassin's Creed fanatics who want to have this game out and constantly displayed to ever think about getting the collector's edition. If you are interested in this game, you should go for that retail edition with the standees. It is not necessary to get it. It's not necessary to get that big honking tower that they were selling for like $60 just to put on your map wherever the tower is going to be and jump up and then jump down. The level of interaction with the physical components does not warrant having a deluxeified edition. And I'm never really a deluxeified type of person, but we all sort of agreed that it felt extraneous, it took up too much table space, it made it more of a table hog than it needed to, and it slowed down the setup in a way that we didn't want to. We did spend, it felt, about 50% of the time setting up, setting down, learning the new extra little rules, unpacking the envelopes, packing them back in, dealing out the new equipment, right? The upkeep here really ends up bogging down the game. And I think a lot of that can be fixed, or some of that can be fixed with the retail edition. And I also think for like the quality of game that you are getting here, and the decision space that you're getting, and the amount of time that you interact with these components, you do not need them just to have them sit in a box for most of your campaign as you deal with the crossbowmen. Like, that's it. You just use the crossbowmen and you use the brutes, and that's pretty much all you interact with for the majority, 90% of the game. As far as other production elements, I think for the most part it was a well-done production. Unfortunately, where it suffers is in a very sort of integral part with those characters that we talked about. The misprints on the characters really made it a frustrating experience, and as your character gets less cool as you progress through because of a poor translation or lack of proofreading, that really casts a big bummer over the gameplay. And we were like, okay, well, I guess we got to switch to playing this less cool, less fun ability thing. It was a real sort of downer when we felt cool for the briefest moments, and we're like, yeah, things are really starting to cook. And then it was kind of taken away from us. And I think that kind of speaks to the progression or lack thereof that happens. We were hoping for more progression, more excitement, more deepening of the characters, and really all you get are like, hey, once per round, you can re-roll something. And you can re-roll something if you're specifically in a canal square. Canal, I know it's pronounced canal. And that's not necessarily the kind of dice manipulation or mitigation that I would quite want. All in all, I asked Griffin and Aaron to give this a score at the end, and they both settled on 4 out of 10. I was a little bit more positive. I gave it 2.5 out of 5. So 5 out of 10. Which is a shame, because I really wanted this to be a nice production and a good game, but I think I actively wanted to stop playing at 2.4, and then I convinced myself to keep going in order for the sake of this review, and hoping that things would get different. And every time I just saw more of the same decision loop. And it was a fun time. Like, it was a fun activity to do with friends. I really love spending time with Griffin and Aaron, and bonding and getting to hang out, and that was like really great. And it was great to have people who were committed and who were on board to go through this whole campaign. And thank goodness that it didn't take us any more days to really complete. But I think if the gameplay were a little bit more rich, and if the scenarios were maybe a little bit more robust, or there was more reason to interact with some of the guards. And I think that's the conflict of the game, right? Like, you want these scenarios to take a little bit longer. You want to have more conflicts. You want to have more attacks. But then the game is telling you not to attack. The game is telling you it's a stealth game with the amount of health that you have, and with the danger of going into a large group of people, and with, like, when brutes come out, you being incapable of killing them sometimes, unless you're really in there with a broadsword. It tells you that, like, you should stay away from conflict and from these sorts of things. And that's fine, but when you don't have tools to use outside of conflict, it just kind of drags itself down. I've been talking for a while. Hopefully you've gotten a sense of the game. I know I said I was going to talk about spoilers, but I won't, because they're not even that spoilery. You know, it doesn't even feel like it's worth talking about them. I found the story to be fairly lackluster, but then again, I've never found the story of Assassin's Creed to be that interesting either. I do like, or one thing that Griffin and Aaron liked, and I said, yes, I like that too, is that you are sort of the assassins that are alongside Ezio. While Ezio's going and doing his Ezio thing and being the protagonist of the Assassin's Creed game, you're also having these little adventures. And I think that is fun, and I know that there's a bunch of like little fan service and some characters that come up that are in the video game that if you were a huge fan of Assassin's Creed 2 that came out in 2014, maybe probably earlier than that, maybe those are for you. But as it stands, unfortunately, this big old box didn't meet the promise or the hope that I had for it. But thank you to the folks at Triton Noir for sending it over. I'm happy that I got a chance to try it. I was excited for it, and I do think it is for some people, but I think that audience is very niche and doesn't have complete intersect with board gamers who are into campaign games or who like really robust, complex, convoluted puzzles. But if you're looking for sort of a straightforward campaign experience and you are a big fan of the IP and you see it on sale, I think you could give it a try. I don't think anyone should ever get the collector's box, ever, because I think the gameplay experience does not support having all of those minis. So that's why I'm happy that the retail one exists and that the standee one exists. Sorry, Triton Noir, that this review was probably harsher than you would expect or would hope for. Sorry to those of you out there who have purchased and got the all-in that this has maybe dampened your enthusiasm. I would say that if you have the game and you haven't gotten it off your shelf yet, it is very accessible. It's really intuitive in terms of how the game mechanics work. If you've played board gaming before, dungeon crawls before, you should have no problem intuiting a lot of the rules. And just feel free to keep intuiting the rules when they go off the rails and you're confused. Just make a choice and you'll have more fun. I think this is definitely still worth a try. It's not like one of those games where if you hear this sort of review, I wouldn't recommend that you play it if you already own it. You know, and I have said that for other games in the past. I really don't think this is it. I think you might find something here that might gel with you. And worst comes to worst, you spend a couple hours delving into the mechanics, seeing if the flow and the gameplay loop is interesting to you. It might really resonate, or it might be like me and slowly go downhill. And when it keeps going downhill, you can stop. Let me tell you, there aren't any great surprises that are coming in the story. It is more of the same every time. And so if that is something that you really take to, well, be excited because you have a very consistent campaign ahead. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm going to end it there. Ooh, you know, I could say probably a whole lot more, but I'm going to end it there. I'm going to end it there because I'm probably repeating myself at this point. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Triton Noir for sending this over. My name is Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but I do have this to clean up by myself this time, which, where's Griffin and Aaron when you need them?